The movie begins with the ticking of the clock that strikes 3 and the bell rings. Students rush out from every classroom in the hallway, throwing papers in the air. Jerry, a chubby teenage boy, walks along with his friend through the hallway, observing others. He finds his bus driving off and rushes behind to catch it. He begins to walk through the streets and park. He is panting badly as he has been walking a long way to reach his home. As he enters his home, he finds his parents in the living room with a stranger. He introduces himself as Roger Johnson, who proposes a summer camp venture for him. He declines to go to summer camp as he has his plans for summer. His mother insists on watching a videotape first. He admires various exciting adventures on the videotape, such as the go-kart, the blob, etc. But as he comes to know that it is a fat camp, he gets hyper and refuses to be a part of any fat loss camp. His father tells Roger that they will let him know about their decision later. Jerry refuses to go and declares it as his final decision. In the next scene, he is sitting on her flight to Camp Hope. The captain announces routine instructions for the passengers. A fat teenage boy comes to him and asks him if he is going to the fat camp. He says that he has guessed that because he is fat. He introduces himself as Roy and tells him that he is going to a fat camp. Jerry tells him that he is going too. As they land, they join a group of adolescents along with their luggage. Roy tells them that the camp is going to be an amazing experience for them. Meanwhile, the camp's bus comes over to pick them up. They begin to shout in excitement. Pat, whom they have seen in the camp's promotional video, has come to drive them to the camp. Pat cracks jokes throughout their journey to the camp. They shout on seeing the board of Camp Hope in the woods. There they find a slim guy showing his skinny butt to others. They laugh at him. Roy tells Jerry that he has been one of them before losing weight. A young beautiful nurse named Julie passes them and asks Pat about the whereabouts of the infirmary. He chokes and shows his ignorance. She moves on to find it on her own. He tells Roy that he panicked. Pat asks Jerry to lend a hand to carry the luggage. He informs Jerry that he has been a counselor in the camp for 10 years. Josh welcomes Jerry and calls him Captain Sir, saluting him. He mocks his captain's badge that the air hostess has given him on the flight. On Josh's cue, everyone draws out the eatables from their pockets and bags and begins to hide them in the room. The next morning, they enjoy the blob and gather to see their hosts, whom they have seen in the promotional video. They welcome the kind couple by shouting hi hi hiya. Harvey announces in a sorrowful way that they have to sell the camp due to bankruptcy. As they leave, Tony Perkis, the new owner of the camp, enters the hall. He is a fitness freak. He overpowers the hall by introducing his new staff and states his story of losing weight and his turning into a confident person from low esteem. He talks in a scholarly fashion. As he leaves with his crew, the boys and the old staff look shocked at the sudden changes in the camp. At night, Pat meets the new counselor, who is as mechanical as Tony Perkis. He thrusts his bag on him and bids him farewell. Then he enters the boys' room. He introduces himself as Lars, to which everyone represses their laughs. He tells them that he produces a very disturbing sound while sleeping and that they don't have to be worried about him. The next morning, the whole camp echoes with his snorting and the boys lie half asleep on their beds after a sleepless night. Meanwhile, they hear an announcement from Tony Perkis, who asks them to wake up for an amazing day. He keeps his cameraman along to record everything he does or utters. At noon, Tony assembles the boys and starts working out along with Lars. The boys fall time and time again while doing the workout. After that, Lars weighs the boys and takes the measurements to set their target weight. Sims weighs the fattest of all. Josh asks everybody to cheer for Sims. Lars freaks out at this. Then he takes their pictures to compare with the results later. Tony talks to some clients and announces into the microphone at the same time about their next lecture on liposuction. Lars pushes the boys into the water for swimming. In the afternoon, they saw a bus coming to the camp. A team of baseball players from Camp MVP has come for a match. The game starts and the Perkis team is badly beaten and injured by the guest team. At night, Tony Perkis comes to their room and tears the bed open with a knife. He draws out the hidden candies. The next morning, the boys hear the announcement standing by Josh's bed that he would not be there anymore. Jerry writes a letter to his grandma. He tells her that Tony has destroyed the blob and go-karts. The food there is even worse. He further states that Tony shows them the demonstration by lying on iron nails with an ice block on his chest to be hit by a hammer. They are mocked by the boys of Camp MVP once a day. He tells her that Tony has organized a dance party to humiliate them to lose weight. He requests her to pray for him. At the dance party, everyone feels awkward as nobody advances to the dancing floor. Julie asks Pat to dance, but he hesitantly denies. Suddenly, Tim jumps on the dance floor and begins to dance crazily all alone. Everyone looks amazed. Pat and Julie, followed by all the chipmunks, join him. The girls also take interest and they begin to dance in pairs with the boys. Tony comes over and disperses the party. At night, Jerry is sitting sadly on one of the vacant go-karts. Pat comes over and Jerry tells him about his desire to ride them. Pat gives him his dream venture by pushing the go-kart from behind. Jerry screams joyfully and they both fall to the ground laughing. Julie observes this from a distance, smiling softly. At night, Jerry notices someone walking in their room. He screams to see Josh there. He acts insane, playing a prank on them. The next morning, Chipmunks tells Josh that they have lost all their foodstuff. He organizes a plan to rob Tony's room to get their eatables back. As Tony goes out for a walk, they invade his house through the window. Sims is designated outside to keep a watch on him. They begin to explore each drawer and cabinet. They remain shocked to see their letters to their homes. Sims comes to alert them on seeing Tony coming back from the walk. They rush back to the window after fixing everything back to normal. Jerry rushes to get Nicholas, who is eating on the kitchen floor, while Josh and Roy slide out of the window. By then, Tony enters the house. They sit on the floor and move crawling to the window. Tony peeps out of the window, but the boys hide themselves behind the trees. After this successful venture, they find Philip eating a burger secretly while sitting on the commode. He tells them the secret of his desired food that he gets from a basket in the woods, filled secretly in the darkness. Next morning, Tony assembles them to see the difference in their weight. Instead of losing weight, everyone gains extra pounds. He talks to himself crazily. Then he announces a 20-mile hike for everyone from the next day. In the evening, Jerry finds Pat sitting alone. Pat encourages him to get rid of Tony and that they are greater in number to handle him. The next day, Tony is all set to go hiking with the boys carrying heavy bags. He shocks them by telling them that they would not have any food during the hiking and that it would cleanse their bodies. They begin to follow him, hoping to escape somehow. On their way, Tony can easily cross a log, but the boys roll down one after the other. They gather themselves and continue the venture. Nicholas hardly escapes a ditch in the forest. After a while, the boys ask Tony to rest for a while. He permits them an hour of meditation. He sits on a cliff and meditates while the boys observe him from a distance. Josh suggests they push Tony from the cliff to get rid of him, whereas Jerry asks him to do something else. Roy questions Tony if anyone can do sit-ups with closed eyes. He asks him to demonstrate the action. Tony lies on the ground and they blindfold him. Josh bends in front of him, slips his shorts down, and asks him to kiss his big ass. Tony gets furious at this. He gives a blow on the back of his knee. Josh runs to escape while Tony chases him. The boys drive him to the point of the ditch and dodge him to fall into it. Back in the camp, Pat, Tim, and Julie ponder on how to get rid of Tony Perkis. Jerry comes running to take them along to show them their work. They keep Tony at a deserted place, mouth taped and tied on a chair. Pat rushes to him, whereas Julie enjoys his miserable condition. Pat untapped his mouth, but as soon as he starts uttering rubbish, he tapes his mouth again. Jerry spreads honey on the bare chest of Lars, who is tied to a tree along with his other crew members. He begs for help and lures them with candy. The next day, Chipmunks remove all Perkis system boards and restore Camp Hope like before. They organize a huge party with lots of food that they throw at one another. They are all covered with cakes, drinks, and other eatables. Pat wants to check them, but Julie stops him by asking to stay with her. Tony, on the other hand, is still a hostage. Roy and Josh go to him and mock his style of announcing the evaluation day. He tries to attack them but receives an electric shock on touching the grill. The next morning, Pat addresses the boys and shows his disappointment in their actions. He makes them realize their responsibility to care for their health. They feel embarrassed about their actions. They start healthy activities, but in a fun way. The next day, parents come to see their boys. They get a warm welcome at the camp. In the hall, Pat welcomes them and shows them the whole footage of their stay at the camp so far. They remain astonished to see the sick behavior of Tony with the boys. Meanwhile, Tony dodges Nicholas by luring him with chocolate and escapes from the prison. As the parents watch Tony's psychic behavior, he appears on the ventilator of the hall. He jumps down, mocking the videotape. He breaks glasses on the floor and speaks of his strength while walking on them barefoot. Jerry's father gives him a punch when he tries to reach for Jerry. He hits him back and gets his head bumped into the counter while doing backflips. Mr. Perkis, Tony's father, arrives to take him back and apologizes to the parents. He intends to close the camp but changes his decision at the request of the boys and their parents. He hands it over to Pat for being there for the longest period and leaves. The camp's previous hustle and bustle resumes, and the boys enjoy their stay there. The most awaited day arrives and Camp Hope is finally combating Camp MVP in the Apache Relay. Both teams are determined to win. The combat starts and Camp MVP wins all physical strength games, but when the question comes to the mental games, Camp Hope defeats the opponent. The Munchkins win in solving the mathematical equations and general knowledge. The final competition of go-karts racing begins. Jerry takes the position on the go-kart, and after so many ups and downs in the race, Jerry wins the race. Camp Hope has finally won the trophy. Pat receives the trophy and hands it over to Sims, who throws it in the water. Chris dives into the water, saying Pat is crazy. Pat admits that he is crazy about his girl and kisses Julie. Jerry addresses Pat and thanks him for making their summer the best experience of their life.
Thank you for watching. It may be easy for you to like and subscribe, but it means the world to us. Please subscribe for more movie recaps.